Present are all of council, our clerk of council, the mayor, and the finance director. There are 2 items on the agenda. The first one is the CT consultant's presentation, proposed rezoning, and a discussion regarding remote meetings. I am going to discuss the remote council meetings first. Our finance director is here if council has any questions, but I wanted to have a discussion with the COVID numbers picking up, and it is frowned upon to gather, because the risk of catching this disease is so high. I am going to propose that City Council, we have the ability to do our council meetings remotely, and this also gives the public an opportunity to participate. The public session is not required by law. It is in our rules of council. Technically, the public discussion is for only items on the agenda, but we are a little bit more lenient in Parma Heights, where we allow people to comment on issues related to the city at our public session at our council meetings, and we refer it to the appropriate department. So I am going to open the floor to see if I can get a consensus of council whether this would be the direction we would want to go in. And I am proposing to start this by January 1st of next year. We have 3 more regular council meetings. So I will open the floor for discussion. Councilman?
I'd like to say that as long as we're able to still come into City Hall to meet and do remote sessions, if you feel more comfortable doing a remote session, but I feel more comfortable doing the session at City Hall, as long as I have the ability to still come into City Hall, I would be fine with it. So I'd put an iPad or a device in front of me and be recorded or taped. I'm totally fine with that. But I would like the opportunity to do that from City Hall.
Okay, so the councilman is suggesting, it'd be up to council if you want to come and remote into the council meetings from here at City Hall or do it from your home. That would be your option, as long as you do it safely, especially when you come in here. So I don't have an issue with that. Does anyone else want to talk about that?
I would prefer that as well. I'm not real big on the virtual meetings. Just yet, I don't think in this setting it's really necessary. But if council wants to do both ways, or talking with the rules, but I would come here and remote from here.
Okay. So I would suggest that council uses a platform such as GoTo meetings or Zoom meetings or something of that nature, where it would be set up by the administrator, which would be our clerk of council. It would be controlled by our administrator and recorded by our administrator. So with council members coming here, the meetings would still be recorded on let's just say we're using Zoom. It would still be recorded, so there would be no need for a recording device as we're using right now. It would be right there, and the residents can log in right from their homes. So, if council members want to do it from your home, there's no issue with that.
Renee?
Is it on now?
Yeah.
Okay.
Councilman, did you want to repeat what you had said before? I'm sorry.
If I can remember.
Yes. It was regarding,
Yeah, I would prefer to do the meetings from here. Like I said, I think with this small group, a remote is really not necessary, but if people are more comfortable doing it remotely, that's fine, as long as we have the option to come here to do it. And in regards to your last comment, with the clerk being the administrator, how does that work? Is there a delay on this? How does this work to where we know if somebody's being cut off, or the whole logistics of the whole thing with the public being involved?
Mm-hmm. The microphones would be muted, and then they have the ability to let the clerk know if they want to speak.
Okay,
and then the clerk would lead that. She would say, so and so has a comment.
Clerk of council. From the administration, it would be Katie if we had something to do, or any other type of a meeting. but try to get at least 2, if not 3, people trained in how to administer the meetings. And then, of course, everyone will work off of the iPads that you've received.
Is that everybody on the administration side too?
Yes.
So, I mean, I get Katie and them are going to learn to be administrators, but all the directors will be here as well. We're on a meeting.
They will be available, if they're not here.
Yeah, I know,
but
they will be on the
available.
meeting.
Yes, yes,
So, okay.
yes.
I would encourage our clerk of council to remote in outside of City Hall.
Okay, that, I just want to
Yeah.
clarify some of that.
Councilwoman, do you want to speak into the microphone just so the people can hear?
I just want to thank you for bringing it up, because I think it's a remote meeting, because I believe it's not a. Thank you, Marie, for bringing up Zoom or a remote meeting. I really think it will give the residents an opportunity to participate in our meetings now, whereas they can't right now, but with these meetings, they can log on and ask a question, and I don't know if you're going to have rules that they have to show a picture of themselves or as a blank, I mean, I'm sure you're going to come up with a few rules. And I was wondering if we could maybe request of the library that we could set aside a computer there, that if somebody by chance doesn't have a computer, that they would be able to access one of the library's computer for a council meeting, if that's possible.
Yes, I would ask that our clerk look into that. Thank you, Councilwoman. And some of the platforms that are used for remote meetings, not only do they only have a link where residents can remote in from their computers, but you can also call in, and there's an access code, so there's more than one way to get on. So whether they want to show their face or not, it would be up to them. The only thing that would apply is that they follow our rules of council, where they're given 3 minutes to speak, and then we address it if it's necessary. But they have the ability to put their comments on the record.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Can I ask another question?
Yes.
Regarding that, do they still have to state their name and their address?
Absolutely.
If they're not going to show their picture, at least we know who we're talking to, or?
Yes, Councilwoman. Mhm.
Should I move to a mic?
Yes, please.
Let me hold it. So just a couple thoughts. First of all, hello. I like the idea of a Zoom meeting or a go-to meeting being real time for the residents, rather than a YouTube meeting where there's a delay and then we don't get their response or their question until after the meeting's been adjourned. I like the idea that we could choose to be here if we wanted, or come in from remote, especially in the event that, let's just say, we've been exposed to the virus potentially, but we're not sick. But we're potentially in a 14-day quarantine where we're not supposed to be interacting with other people. It still gives us an opportunity to participate in the meeting without missing the meeting. But I also agree that if I was well and able to be here, I would rather be here. I like the idea, too, that all of us will have a little picture. We'll all be in attendance wherever we're in attendance, including the mayor and the directors, so everybody will see everybody's faces during the meeting. So I think it's a good win for council and the community.
Thank you, Councilman. Are there any other comments? Director, did you have anything for us?
I did do a webinar with GoToMeeting. I am more familiar with Zoom, but just from that initial meeting with them, I think that they are probably the way to go. And the product would be called GoToWebinar. It's a little bit different and can incorporate more participants. And also, one point that I really liked that they made was that they've been around for a long time, and they were initially created for a business platform to be secure, whereas Zoom was maybe created more as a social type of platform. So not that they're not secure, but GoToMeeting has been, kind of in that business for a long time. So the prices vary. It's about $50 a month. You can't really beat that. And there are a lot of customization options to make sure that people can be involved but stick within the guidelines, so.
Thank you for looking into that. I appreciate it. Does council have any objection to going in that direction, to using GoToMeeting? Any discussion? Okay. Okay.
Good platform.
Okay, if there's no other discussion, then thank you. I appreciate it. So we will move into the CT Consultants presentation for the proposed rezoning. Mhm.
I'll go get her mail.
We're still.
She's got to set up her laptop.
I thought I would pull up Google Earth too, if, in case anybody has any questions or wants to point specifically, but I don't have the code, password. Maybe I already am connected. I was connected. Yeah, once I was done. Okay, yes. I'm all set, yeah.
Okay, so we will start the discussion of the proposed rezoning, and with us, we have Chris Hopkins, so I'll turn it over to you.
So at the last meeting, 2 weeks ago, I guess, we went through generally the proposed code that describes the 3 mixed-use districts. And we had some discussion on, starting on the uses and related to where they were along the corridor, where existing uses are along the corridor, and whether or not they would be permitted in the new code. So I thought maybe we could pick that back up. And I understand you have received a list of all of the parcel groups. Does that make sense? Do you want to go through the list and discuss the ones to decide whether they would stay either as permitted by right, conditionally permitted, or not permitted, as in the code?
Sure.
Yes.
Yeah, that'd be fine.
Okay, and then if we do have specific questions on, or questions on specific parcels, then we can look them up on here so that we know, and everyone's pointing to the same place on the maps. Okay. So, we can go. I guess before we go there, though, does anyone have any just general questions on the proposed code itself, just in general, in terms of clarification on the distinctions between the 3 districts? No. Okay.
I think,
Councilman Stivoli?
Chris, I think, just to be clear, existing businesses get to operate as existing businesses, correct?
That's correct.
And the owner sells it to his relative. It still is allowed to continue to operate as an existing business.
That's
Or
correct.
he sells it to a third party, and he's still allowed to operate that as an existing business,
Right.
correct?
Yes, that is correct. Zoning regulations are not retroactive.
Okay.
So if you, if something is across the street, let's say, and according to the way it's drafted and you approve it, and it gets adopted that way, and all of a sudden that use could no longer go in if it were to apply tomorrow, the existing uses continue as what's called non-conforming uses, and then as long as that use is operated continuously without interruption that extends more than a certain period of time. So in Parma Heights zoning code right now, you have a 2-year time limit. So if it's abandoned for more than 2 years, then it cannot be reestablished. You can change that, and it can be as short as 6 months, but it can't be shorter, and it can't be any longer than 2 years.
Okay.
So that's also a policy question or
Oh,
policy decision that
okay.
council can make.
Thank you.
Okay, so since we are going to go through this list, then I do have some additional copies of what are additional standards for conditional uses. So they're use-specific requirements that are typical, so they come from another community that I've worked with, but it's to give you an idea of the kinds of rules and regulations that can be included. And also, the first page is what's called general criteria. So the, you can have all the rest. So just again to make the distinction between what's listed in the table, the permitted use table, if it says it's a P, that's a permitted use by right, which you can have a procedure to review their development plan or their site plan, so you see how the proposed building is going to be designed on the site. And that can be reviewed by the planning commission if that's how the development plan review process is set up. But it does not require a public hearing, and it is, the planning commission cannot impose additional conditions. If it's listed as a conditional use in the table, and someone applies, makes an application for it, they would go through the same development plan review process, but on top of that, as a conditional use, there would be a public hearing, and the neighbors are notified, and then as part of that, the planning commission can impose additional conditions. And they would review the proposed use according to the general criteria that's the first page of this. So they're reviewing it from a judgmental standpoint, in the sense it's a qualitative review, and it's a judgment call, which is what the planning commission is empowered to do. They're empowered to make these discretionary decisions as long as they have review criteria that they're going to use every time they review an application for conditional use. And then on the following pages, these use-specific regulations, we had talked before about gas stations, that gas stations typically are conditional uses. So in here, you can see on page, on the bottom of page 2, some typical requirements for gas stations. And these go above and beyond what, say, a grocery store would be required to have. And as you can see, it addresses fuel pumps, and it addresses open space and where the canopies are approved, or where they're required to go. So that's a distinction between what's listed on the table as a permitted use, a P use, or a C use. And one other distinction that you can make is so a gas station or a, let's say a outdoor operations, they can be permitted by right in one district, conditional in another district, and then not permitted in the third district. So you do have that ability to make judgment calls on a policy decision at the city council level when you're adopting these rules to make that distinction. So that you're basically saying certain things can go here by right, over here as a conditional use, as long as it's harmonious with and compatible, and in no way are we going to let them go over here. You know, we decide that that's not compatible with the existing uses that we want to encourage, or what the comprehensive plan, or what your planning policies are. So that's the level of discretion that you have when you're adopting new regulations to apply to various areas of the city. Okay. So with that, then, if we pick groups of them, starting with the residential, and I can give a little synopsis in terms of what these mean and what they're intended to achieve. And for that, let me pull up the map. Okay, so the residential uses, and as I mentioned at the last meeting, residential uses, even though the three areas that we've identified and that we're talking about on the Pearl Road corridor and West 130th, right now, these areas are all zoned commercial, and there's it's limited to commercial uses. More contemporary types of zoning regulations are recognizing that you get a much more vibrant commercial district, and in this case, a town center district or the West 130th Gateway District, by enabling, permitting residential uses to be part of that. In some cases, residential uses tend to be permitted by right, and in this case, when you look at the chart, it's for if you're not on the first floor. If you're on the second floor or upper stories in a 3 or 4 story building, then the idea is that retail or other types of commercial uses are what you're striving for on the first floor. And that's what's promoting a walkable environment and more activity. So the goal is to try to keep the first floor of buildings commercial, but then what happens on the second and above, whether it's offices or residential, that's not too much of a concern. It's really trying to promote commercial uses on the first floor. So that's why you see that above the ground floor, live workspace and dwelling units or apartment units are above the first floor are permitted by right. And then if they're not, if they are, say, attached single family or a townhouse development or an apartment complex, those are listed as conditional uses in the town center district and the West 130th area, because they don't have the first floor as commercial space. So that is more what you would be looking at from a conditional use standpoint, is making sure that the design and the placement, the location of the multifamily or of the townhouses are designed in such a way that they do not disrupt pedestrian movement and activity. So they're appropriate, they can be designed in an appropriate way and located in an appropriate way, provided they're not disruptive. And so that's why you see the Cs in some districts and Ps in the other. On the other hand, when we look at the stretch of Pearl Road between the town center and West 130th, all of these residential uses are permitted by right. That they would still come to the planning commission for review from a development plan review standpoint, but that as a use permitted by right is an easier review process, less complicated, there's no public hearing. So that's why it's promoting more of the residential uses in the neighborhood area along Pearl Road. The group living, assisted living, group homes, and nursing homes, these are uses that you have a senior citizen or a senior type of district. So it's a matter of policy for the city to have one, two, or all three of them. However, to the extent that you have residential uses, the group homes, they are a protected type of use protected in the Ohio Revised Code. And so group homes, it would make sense to keep them. And there's a different classification, there's a small size and a large size. And so to the extent you have you have the townhouses, that you may want to consider keeping at least the group home designation. So in terms of the residential uses, based on that explanation, does anyone have any questions or want to discuss and make any changes in any of those? Nope, you're all good?
I'm good.
Okay, then the next category, public and civic uses. So a lot of these, I shouldn't say a lot, some of these you already have, and the current zoning regulations do require things like churches to go through they're called special permits right now, and that actually requires council's approval. So this is a policy call on whether or not you would want to be more restrictive and make any of these conditionally permitted uses. The idea with making them permitted by right is that you're not likely to get a lot of these uses. The daycare facilities maybe more so than the others, but the recreational facilities, those are listed as a conditional use because they range. I mean, there's no one type of recreation use that comes to mind when you just use that term. It's very broad. So that's why they are typically regulated as conditional uses. The same with the schools and the utilities, the hospital, and in here, I suggested making the hospital conditional and permitted only in the West 130th, primarily because it works best in an area where you've got already got a lot of activity. So any questions on any of these civic type uses? Yes?
On the daycare center, the adult and children, I believe our ordinance right now is in a residential area, those can only be X amount of feet apart, let's say 500. You can't have two daycares on the same street.
Mm-hmm.
And my understanding is of why the city did that was to traffic. If you have a daycare, and I don't know how the code reads, say you have 5 children, that's 5 cars twice a day that go to that house. So if you had 2 next door, that'd be 10 cars on the street and parking.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the only thing I'm
Yep.
saying. That's the only reason we did that in daycare.
Yeah, okay, so, I recall seeing that requirement, that spacing requirement, and this is actually referring to a daycare center rather than a daycare home, and since you brought it up, there is, that daycare homes are also protected by the Ohio Revised Code, and communities are not allowed to prohibit them or regulate them by saying they have to be dispersed. So, and they are labeled, they're termed daycare, family daycare type B. So, in the way the rules are written, it's anyone can watch up to 6 kids in their house, provided there aren't any more than 2 that are under the age of 2. There's some, and your own kids don't count. So that would be, and whenever you have any sort of residential, even if it's an apartment building, anyone who has their own space, wherever they live, they're entitled by Ohio Revised Code to have home daycare. But that's the only one that's protected. So that would make sense to include it, listed in the zoning code. It's one of those things that if you were overhauling the entire zoning code, that would definitely have been something I would have inserted, but because when this was drafted, I didn't know you had that limitation. So it would make sense to actually address it in this table. Then the question is whether or not daycare centers, which is anything that's not at someone's house, so if it's in any commercial building, for the same reasons that you mentioned, does it make sense along Pearl Road or West 130th to make them conditional? So sometimes communities make them conditional because they are different than like a coffee shop or a restaurant. So they're not exactly conducive to say the town center. So that would be one of those uses that if you were to decide to make them conditional across the board, that would be common. I mean, other communities do that. So that's one of those policy choices you have. It's okay.
One here, one back here, and they're so regulated by their own entities, whatever.
Right. Yeah, so they have
regulates them
licensing
are-
requirements.
Their licensing
Right.
requirements are very strict, more
Mhm.
strict than our own.
Right. Oh, okay. So we'll leave them as is for right now then. Okay. All right, then moving on to the commercial uses. So animal services, so veterinary and grooming, that's pretty common. What tends to be disruptive are outdoor kennels. So as long as you've got soundproofing, that's not an issue, and which is why I've left it as permitted. And then any sort of typical retail like artist works and sales. We had talked earlier about business services. We can come back and talk about whether or not that makes sense to be permitted or not permitted in neighborhood mixed use. And then the drive-through facilities, there are some in the conditional use section that I distributed. There are some regulations that are typical for drive-through facilities. They tend to be conditionally permitted in commercial districts, again, because of their in and out traffic patterns that are common at drive-through facilities. And that's the same issue with automotive things like gas stations and car washes, is that when you have people who come in and out pretty quickly, they're there for 3 minutes to pump the gas. So you've got a lot of in and out traffic, which can then be disruptive if you've got a line of retail and restaurants and people are walking along the street, along the sidewalk, and then they come to a car wash or a gas station, and it's like all of a sudden now you got to watch because there's so much traffic coming in and out. And so that's why that's conditionally permitted. And then eating and drinking establishments. And I think I mentioned at the last meeting, microbreweries I listed as conditional because they include some level of production. Indoor entertainment, a lot of times indoor entertainment, depending on the size of the facility, can be loud. So in a smaller neighborhood environment, making it conditional gives the planning commission the ability to impose the conditions on it. Financial services, all that's pretty standard. The medical marijuana dispensary, the city already has some regulations for that, so making it conditional is somewhat perfunctory in the sense that it would have to comply as well with 1190. The medical service, and that says limited by definition, and that's in contrast to the list underneath, the licensed treatment facility. I do not have conditions for that. That was something I think we're still doing some research on to figure out what makes the most sense. And then permanent cosmetics versus body art and tattoo, there's a distinction there in the sense that, and I have something in this handout from tonight that gives you a definition of what permanent cosmetics are versus tattoo parlor. And the distinction is primarily clientele and the purpose people are getting, going to get the cosmetic, the permanent cosmetics. So that tends to be things, makeup, eyebrows and things like that. But it can also be medically related to, and so there are some communities that have made the distinction that if you're not doing the permanent cosmetics and you're just the body art and tattoo, that you're either not permitted or you're permitted only, like in this case, only along West 130th and then as a conditional use. And the city does have some, the 1,000 foot separation, which has been upheld in Cuyahoga County's court system. The laboratories and research facilities, this is like an office use for the most part, but again, it's one of those types of uses that it can be very conducive and compatible, but depending on what they're actually doing inside, there might be surprises in how they're operating their business. And so that's where making it a conditional use, that's why I made it conditional in the town center and West 130th and not permitted in the neighborhood mixed use district. And then looking at light industrial is one step up in terms of laboratories and research facilities. Light industrial is, again, one of those types of uses that could be compatible depending on what kind of equipment they're using and how noisy and how much truck traffic that might be generated. So that's why that's listed as a conditional use in West 130th and not permitted in the town center or the neighborhood area. And then the last one is limited outdoor operations. And this is one that if you are inclined to permit outdoor storage or anything like that, which right now is not something that the city permits. But in the West 130th area, there are bigger lots. So, and some types of uses like the industrial, light industrial, may request outdoor storage in smaller amounts, and to the extent that you're regulating how it's screened and where it's placed, if it's placed in the back of the building and you can't see it from the street and it's well screened so that neighboring properties can't see it either, there are communities that allow that. So that's a policy call as well. So with that, any question? Yes.
I have a quick, can we go back to the animal services?
Sure.
Not including boarding kennels. Are boarding kennels allowed anywhere in the city? This state, because of the parks and the metro parks, somebody might want to do a business boarding animals. And
So that's a good question, because that would fit under this limited outdoor operation. And so it could be handled in that manner, that without the boarding facilities, it's permitted by right. But if say a grooming place came in and they wanted to also have some limited boarding with outdoor kennels, then they could request the conditional use for the limited outdoor operations. So you can pair it like that.
so that could fall under there?
Right.
Okay.
So then again, thinking about that would only be permitted then as a conditional use in the West 130th area.
Right. Now, would that be written in the limited outdoor operations? I mean, Would that be in a definition of that?
Yeah, actually, what we would do then is craft regulations like what's in here now, that would spell out specifically.
And include that?
What kind of outdoor
Okay.
operations are acceptable.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Any other questions on?
I would be actually in favor of that, the ability to use business services, that top line says, not being able to know what they either permit or conditional. We know that whole strip of, property along a good portion of Pearl Road is where there's a lot of those smaller shops, and that might be an opportunity for a small business owner to go in and start up something in that area. I guess my follow-up question to that, is in zoning or in planning, is there any conversation ever about what the back of the property looks like? What residents actually see when their yards abut that?
Very good question. Yes, and that is typically addressed through landscaping and screening requirements. And it's also common that if you have a conditionally permitted use, that one of the conditions is beefed up landscaping and screening. So to the extent that, excuse me, if you have, say, a retail business and they have just, their deliveries are being made to the back of the building, and you have, maybe a 5-6 foot fence required. If you are allowing outdoor storage of some type of use, then to require trees and something taller than right. So you can definitely do that. So yes, any concerns with changing that to the business services? And just to reiterate, this is a working draft, and so anything that's put into this text and changed right now, that the goal is to get it to a place where everyone says, okay, this is pretty good. We're satisfied with it as it's revised, and then it starts back to the Planning Commission for formal review through a public hearing process, at which time tweaks can still be made to the code. So the purpose of any public hearing is to get feedback and take that feedback into consideration and revise it and tweak it as needed. So I would encourage you to let's explore things right now and get it to a place where you think, okay, this is a good draft that we can start the official discussion on.
Right.
Okay. So if we make it,
I agree. No, I was agreeing. I was in agreement.
so the question is in business services, if it's permitted by right or as a conditional use. I suppose we can start out more restrictive and make it conditional. Okay, any other ones along the list? What are your thoughts on outdoor operations?
Sorry. I guess my question, Chris, is if we're trying to promote connectivity to the Southland, how does that promote? Should I be looking at promote connectivity to Southland? Should I be looking at all of these businesses or conditions or whatever with that in mind? Or do I put up a wall and give you an answer based on that?
Your concern about compatibility and connections to Southland is correct.
Okay.
So to think about it, but again, I don't have any skin in this game, so to speak.
Understood.
So I'm not I don't want to appear like I'm advocating one way or another. But to the extent that you have deeper parcels, which I'm showing you this one here, even though there's a building there right now. But in the event there wasn't a building that far back and there was, let's say you had the building and the parking area swapped, then the question is it possible to do some form of outdoor storage and still be, compatible with Southland across the street and compatible with the residential houses that are so close to the back?
Right.
So, and right now, like I said, right now, the city does not allow that.
Right.
So typically, places like Home Depot and garden centers, they're the ones that mostly would be what you would be looking at
Right.
in terms of some sort of outdoor storage area, outdoor garden center sort of thing.
That was originally there, a builder's square was there originally in that area, which was nice for Southland because they could start the home improvements without having to drive a far distance. This is why I'm asking the question. I don't want to get into the situation in 20 years where we just pigeonhole ourselves and we can't put up residential or mixed use because we've already allocated that for something else. And that's where my question is coming from. As I looked at our neighbor's plan, our neighbors are putting together a very ambitious plan for the Southland area.
Right.
I understand that there's sometimes we won't be able to compete in some arenas, but we want to help by offering something that their side cannot do that we can. And so that's where I'm looking at it from. And I'm not looking at it for today. I'm looking at it,
Down the road.
5, 10, 15 years down the road. And that's where my concern comes from. It's not that I don't want anything. It's how is it going to impact our neighbors across the street? How are our neighbors across the street going to impact us? So I'm trying to keep all the balls in the air at the same level. So that's where my question comes from.
So I guess then the question to you is, are you more inclined or less inclined, given what you've seen proposed for Southland, more inclined or less inclined to permit any sort of outdoor storage?
I haven't decided one way or the other. That's why I'm listening to your presentation to find out what are some of the options that are available. Like Councilwoman Everett just mentioned kennels, okay? I know there's a huge kennel on, State Road and Ridgewood in that area. There's one on Brook Park Road. Is that an area that would be conducive to that type of business? And I don't know. I don't know what the noise levels are. I don't know. And I don't know how it would impact the neighbors in that area. So I think noise is my biggest concern for any business. Because there's one thing I don't want are the residents that are there, that have been there for a long time, to have to now deal with noise. And that's my issue with it. It's not the type of business, it's what are they going to have to endure?
Yeah, and that's a good point. And based on my experience, once there is a use that is established on a piece of property, and you don't expect there to be noise problems, but then somehow or other it gets noisy, it's a very difficult thing to force someone to reduce the noise.
Okay?
Because, and it all depends, in terms of how often it's noisy and what time of day, but to the extent that the noise occurs at night, you know,
Right.
it's, and the police go, are called, and people are complaining, it can be very hard to police that, and then
Okay.
force, document it first of all, and then force somebody to make changes where you're comfortable it won't happen again.
Okay.
So if, and again, you, like you said, things are very compact here along Pearl Road and even West 130th.
Right.
So I would agree with you that noise is a very, very valid concern, thinking about whether or not any sort of outdoor activities would be permitted.
Thank
So
you.
and a few other things to keep in mind, though, in terms of regulating outdoor operations is whether, depending on, again, the environment, it's not, it's a common practice to say you can have a small, if you're going to allow it, it cannot exceed, say, 5% of the floor area of the enclosed building. Or, so you could regulate it like that, too, so that you're trying to allow some outdoor operations, but be very conservative on what you're permitting, so.
No, that's helpful, thank you.
So we can keep it like this, and I can draft some conditions and for you to review. That works?
Does that work for council? Okay.
Okay. Okay, and then you have the last group, automotive uses. And these are all listed as conditional uses, and then in some areas are listed as not permitted. And I know we had this discussion last time that if that were to remain that way, then you have some businesses that you would like to see remain in place that could be, where this could be detrimental to them.
Right.
And again, that is where then it's crucial, I think, to draft the conditions, make them a conditional use and then draft the conditions to ensure that they're not harmful. So the way, the spectrum in terms of automotive uses, so you have gas stations and car washes, and those, they're getting bigger every year, it seems, bigger and bigger footprints, but they are on the lower end of the scale in terms of intrusive from a noise standpoint. Then when you get to the vehicle sales, that's a bigger area, so that, and then there are already regulations in place requiring that, or restricting them to new car sales. So we would keep all of those existing requirements. And then as you get to vehicle service and then up to vehicle repair, that's where you start to get operations that can be more noisier. And so I guess opening the discussion then, is there, what is your thought in terms of making changes to the neighborhood mixed-use district? And do we need to look at any of the uses on the Google Earth?
Yeah, Chris, can we just take our neighbors down the street at Liberty in the neighborhood district? It's right next to Incarnate Word Academy. Right. I think that's it. I'm looking at a glare, so I don't know.
Can everyone see that?
So we have that as no in neighborhood mixed use for the new car sales. I know we have ordinances in place for new cars. And I know you already explained that it's, whatever we do isn't going to harm existing businesses, because that's not what the purpose of this is. Does it stay a no?
Well,
Even though we we love our neighbors down the street, we don't want them to move. Should it be permitted because that's what the use is now? I mean, and you can use this as an example.
So if you look at the handout from tonight, on page 5, there are a set of regulations that, this example comes from the city of Willoughby, and the city of Willoughby had a similar sort of restriction in terms of only new car dealerships. We had the discussion in terms of what is it that is most critical. So the minimum acreage, the minimum size of 4 acres, and a minimum building size of 25,000 square feet, those two things alone were going to limit the ability, and it would happen here too, limit the ability or the number of sites that work. So to the extent, and we can check to see what Liberty, what their acreage is, it's reasonable to make a change to allow them as a conditional use. That's perfectly reasonable. This would be, yeah, they're on the bottom of the first page of, yeah, so they're 5 acres. And they have 35,000 square feet of building floor area. So-
Right.
So that would work. So that's fine if you wanted to make that a conditional use. Going one? Going two? Everyone good? Okay. Okay. Okay, then gas stations and car washes. What are your thoughts? And do you know of any? I don't believe there are any, except someone mentioned that perhaps going to the east.
Yeah.
Yeah, right, that's, yeah, that was the one that I was.
Yes.
Yeah, that's town center. That's already in the gateway.
Right, so the gas stations are fine. The only one that I think is right now on the map itself here, this corner, and again, I hope I mentioned the last time, the boundaries of the town center can be tweaked. But right now, the way I had identified the boundaries, that one car wash at Ackley would not be in the town center area. So we can either,
Oh, you're saying move the town center?
you can either move the
Outline.
boundaries,
Okay.
so that all of that area, which when you think about the existing, oh, let's see here. Okay. So the shopping center, which is where the number 10 is for the block number 10,
Right.
that's very similar to, a situation across the street, so it's fine. It would be reasonable to include all of that in the town center area. Or, like we've done with the car sales, make them conditional, so it's up to you.
I don't-
And like I said, you can think about it and make the change later, or we could make the change now and think about it and still change it back or whatever.
I feel like that area from Parma South and the fire station and down is kind of town center to me, it's very easily included. When I think of the Memorial Day parade, that's where people are, and that's where they're parking, and that's where they're walking to and from. So it would seem to me to make sense to include that in the town center.
Okay, so when you say include that, you're talking about all of 10 and all of 11, and then this little bit, there are two little parcels on the other side of the street. So extend all that.
And I think that's kind of down farther. No, I think that, isn't that where the beauty shop is? On the other side of 9. 9 and 10 are not part of town center, correct?
Currently.
Currently, right, currently they are not.
The way they're shown on the map,
Right.
you're right, you're right.
Okay, because right then, you know, you got the church and then the houses start there, so besides Valero and the shopping center there, I don't know if that would include,
Car wash came in, he had the first, he owns the first two homes, or two, as a buffer.
The first two homes on Ackley?
Ackley.
Okay.
But that was like his buffer, you know, for the residents. They're still homes, and he rents them out.
Yeah, okay. So all in favor of changing the town center boundary? Raise your hand.
Well, I want to bring you up to speed.
So the discussion was related to block number 9, which, can you see my little cursor? Kind of hard to see. So there's a car wash there, the Valero, car wash gas station, right? And so the way the use table is drafted currently, gas stations and car washes are not permitted would not be permitted on that corner in the neighborhood mixed-use district. So the question was, the two choices are making the gas station and the car wash conditionally permitted in the neighborhood mixed-use district, or extending the town center district boundary and including those parcels, 10 and 11, or 9 and 10,
Right.
and then the two parcels across the street.
Right.
I have no objection to extending the boundaries of the town center.
Okay.
I'm sorry, just so I understand, the town center boundary would be extended into 9 and 10. That's what we're talking about?
Right.
Okay.
are you talking also about the one across the street too, that little parcel
And
you
then
have
there's two parcels that are by,
on the north
is
side?
it Notabene?
Nota Bene?
Okay,
Notabene.
Oh,
okay,
Yeah, that's where the hairdresser is. and-
Yes.
right.
Yeah.
I make
That
her-
makes sense.
what's
I
on
would-
the corner there? Is that the other gas station?
What other corner?
If you look at 10 and go to your left,
Yep, there's a gas station on that triangular piece, yes. Yep, so you would actually be taking
Yes.
care of,
That whole,
That whole
that whole
section.
thing would be included as part of the town center.
right.
Okay, I'm okay with that.
think of it as a body, or I think we just have two places there, but, you know, they moved all that along.
Does anyone have an objection to including that area as part of the town center?
No,
Or
my-
is there any discussion, Councilwoman?
My only question would be, would that all then become conditional instead of no?
Correct.
Okay.
Yes,
So all
because-
the ends on the gas station and the car wash are conditional still because that's the town center mixed use then, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct, and, but by leaving the N for the car wash and the gas station in the neighborhood.
The neighborhood.
mixed use, then everything that's west of town center and east of West 130th would still be not
No,
permitted.
right, okay. Yeah, that's good, okay. Thank you.
Are there any, is there any reason, anything that's like a tire, oil change or vehicle service that's in the neighborhood?
Well, there are,
Yeah, that's what I thought, there were. So if we go back and look at, what is the address for the,
Where are you looking? Are you looking on old, you were looking on York Road? Is that what the neighborhood section you're looking at?
no, at the last meeting, someone in the planning commission mentioned it too, that there's an auto-oriented use
Yeah.
on the south side
Yeah.
of Pearl, and I can't remember where.
Parma Park, I believe it was.
yeah, what's the name of it? Rad Air?
That area.
Rad Air?
There, next to AutoZone?
Yeah.
Rad
Across the
Air.
street? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, so that would be
And then there's that one across
On
from
the corner of
Wendy's.
Pearl and Mandalay.
which
Oh,
one?
Midas, yeah.
There it is at the top with the blue roof.
Oh,
Is that correct? Is that what we're looking
Sorry,
at
what-
here?
I didn't hear the,
It's on the corner of Pearl and Mandalay, next to AutoZone.
Oh, yeah, that's the one.
oh,
That's
So-
that one, yeah. But the one across the street, the Rad Air's
Eddie
across
Corner
the street.
is at Parma Park and Pearl. So there's two.
Yeah.
in
And
the Midas.
And Midas,
Orchard and Pearl?
yeah, and Midas.
Yep.
okay, and what does the Red Air do? What is,
Repairs.
Auto repairs, oil changes, tires. Because they just built that garage, they have that big garage in the back. Like those 4 bays or 5 bays in the back.
Our former councilman Schwackenwald, I think, referred to it as the Garage Mahal.
Yeah.
Yes, that's what.
There it is.
Yes.
It looks nice, though.
I think it could serve as a police station or fire department. Okay, so it sounds like it makes sense then to make that a conditional use because you've got a number of occurrences.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
And so that would fall in the category of the minor service, the gas station, the oil change, like a Firestone sort of thing?
Well, it would be the vehicle repair, but not, is that only for like body work, is that what that's for?
So, yeah, vehicle repair and restoration is the major type of auto repair.
I
Doesn't-
think Red Air may do that.
Or the one across the street, doesn't it? The one by Wendy's, don't they do repairs? Like on foreign
I
or?
believe so, yes.
Yeah,
Yeah, they do body,
they do body work, yeah.
So the one that's this blue.
Yes.
Yeah, mm-hmm.
Okay, and no complaints? Or They seem to be.
There's issues that we're dealing with currently.
What sort of issues are they? Are they noise related? Outdoor storage? Or
The amount
parking?
of cars that are stored there.
The number of cars. So what's the thought then? Is this the only business then that would be non-conforming if we didn't make the change?
Dennis could be more specific, but I believe so.
Or restoration? Or what are we talking?
Yeah, so from a major car repair place and the restoration body shop type thing, is this a repair place the only one like that that's between,
No.
Red Air does major repairs, not body work, I mean, they could, but they're like a full-service garage.
uh-huh.
Like
Do
you
they
get a
take,
transmission done.
Oh,
or-
okay.
Or brakes or whatever.
Uh-huh.
So that's Red Air, that's on Parma Park.
Right. okay, the garage mahal?
Yeah.
Director? Director?
And we have one down almost on 130th on Pearl. On the left, there's another,
Speedway.
yeah, next door to Speedway.
But that's on West 130th.
No,
It's
no.
on Pearl.
that is on
Oh,
Pearl.
It would be like section 20
All right.
Yes.
in the neighborhood. 19, yeah.
Yeah, you're right.
So
The other way.
Yeah, go,
between,
Past Burger King,
almost to 100.
on the north side of the street?
On the
South.
south side.
So this
Keep
is,
going.
is this Arby's here?
Yeah, keep
Yes,
going.
it's right, it's,
Right next.
Keep going
you
east.
see the cars in the back, see the cars?
Okay.
that's
Yeah,
it.
so that would be in the West 130th.
But that's showing like section 20 in the neighborhood.
It's,
So that part of the Pearl Road, so you're saying almost to the first side street, then is all West 130th?
so we have, on this map here, the corner parcel, what, the corner parcel is this one right here. Maplewood, correct? And then this is Cornerstone, this is the former Cornerstone that's vacant. And then this is the Arby's,
Yes.
and then this is where, so this would be in the West 130th.
Okay.
Our Arby's would be 19, and would the auto repair be 20 in the neighborhood section?
No, that's on 130th. There, she's saying that's in the,
That's, I think, Chris, where the drawings are
Oh.
touching.
all of these.
So,
This is in 21, is what you're saying?
no,
That yellow area.
Go up.
it's like almost in the yellow area on this map.
Which map are you?
No.
And that's why I said.
Yeah, but see, I think, and we can go back to Google Maps, but, this building right here, that's, so the big parcel at the corner is the new gas station.
Right.
And then going to the east, to the right, where there is a bigger building that seems to go from one lot line to the other, and then you've got the big area in the back.
Right.
That's where the parking, that's where the.
Okay.
It's, yeah, it's this
So
parcel.
it would, according to the way the map is drawn now, there would be a conditionally permitted use. So that one would not be affected.
Okay.
So then the question then is, the, that air. And the blue place. Yep. So, I think that's right in here, then, here and over here. So, what are your thoughts? Make it a conditional use and then just have a lot of performance standards related to? Okay.
There's also the one on York Road that just opened up. It was the tire place and.
That one's in the town center.
In the town center?
Yeah, that's the second one. Yeah, I know that one because looking at Google Maps, it still showed them, Google Earth, it still showed it as a vacant.
Oh, okay.
So
Okay.
it showed up. I had to correct that one. So I know right where it is. Okay, all right. Any other comments then on the use table, the use list? Nope. Okay. Then, one of the questions then for you to think about then is on page 4. And this is a requirement that would apply to the area of the town center area only. And this is saying that in the event somebody has a development proposal, let's say across the street, I like picking on Big Lots. But let's say Big Lots was proposing some sort of redevelopment. And I'm trying to, and I believe it's the 4.6 acre site. Or it could be the 10 acre site. Anyways, well above the 1.5 acre requirement. And that what this requirement is saying, that in this area where we want to create a town center in a mix of uses and encouraging mixed uses in the same project. Right now, you have a mix of uses, just by virtue of the diversity of uses you have. But if you're trying to, require a proposal that is designed so that you have retail and residential, or retail and office, or office, residential, retail altogether, then this provision would kick in anytime it's over 1.5 acres, or the floor area being proposed is 60,000 square feet. And what this provision is saying then, whenever that occurs, that bigger, larger parcel development must have 2 or more mix of uses, and with 50% of the first floor building frontage has to have the pedestrian-oriented type of uses, and on that street-facing facade, so it has to have display-type windows, which is what the 60% of the street-facing facade comprised of clear windows. That's trying to require that display window characteristic. With some caveat, though, that allows the planning commission to waive some of these requirements through the conditional use procedure. So my question to you, do you agree with that? So you can agree with the concept, but think the standards should be changed, either increased or decreased, and any or all of the standards, numerical requirements. So one other thing to keep in mind is that the numbers are really easy to change. And so, it's not like if we change it from 1.5 acres to 2 acres, I have to go back and do a whole lot of revisions. So, and I say that because if you're still uncertain, then it's one of those things that it can be changed at any time going forward. So those are easy changes to make. So any comments or questions related to that provision?
I just have a question, number 3, a minimum of 60% of the street facing building arena.
Yes.
So these are a minimum of 2, a maximum of 5 stories, right? In this, or in area?
You are right, yes.
So is 60% windows on a 5-story building? Does that look good? I mean, can you
So
give me an example?
the way 3 is written is, you're measuring, I mean, this could be tweaked if it's not clear, but the intent is that when you have a multi-story building, you're only requiring that 60% on the first floor facade. So typically it's from, the ground floor level to typically whatever the first floor height is. So in some cases, when I've measured, checked development plans for compliance with this, and it's not stated clearly, then I just take what's typical for a first floor, 14 feet. So on a 5 or 6 story building, that requirement isn't any different than on a 2-story building.
Okay. It's probably clear, I just, not that.
Well, when I read it again, I thought it could be improved. So. Any questions on that? No. On the next page, the development standards, these seem complicated because they're trying to impose a minimum and a maximum. And to some extent, then there isn't a whole lot of differentiation related to the side yards, and the separation when it's abutting a single-family or two-family district. But the idea is, with these regulations, is to encourage or require buildings to be located closer to the street. That's fundamentally, that's what the requirements are about. One thing to keep in mind is that most often, in an environment like what you have along Pearl Road and West 130th, there's not a whole lot of subdivision going on. You know, lots aren't being, you don't have a 10-acre site that's being carved up. So the minimum lot sizes and lot widths are there just in case there is some sort of subdivision. But that's not likely to occur. So then we move down to the next one, and that's the maximum residential density that's permitted. The 12 units an acre for the neighborhood, and I wanted to double check where this came from, but the high density multifamily district, I believe, is somewhere around 30 or 40 units an acre. That's already permitted. So, and that could be more specific, if that makes, it's always easier to include a hard and fast number than to refer to some other place in the code. But are there any issues or any comments or concerns about the density of residential along, in any one of these three districts?
Council have any questions or concerns? Nope.
The other thing that is typical in residential projects is to have a minimum dwelling unit size. And does the city have a minimum dwelling unit size currently? Do you recall? No. Which is based on occupancy? Yep.
I do have a question here. I don't know if that, because the city ran into a problem in the past. Someone built out the lots. You know, it was an empty lot. They put a house on, a beautiful home, but they built out the lot. So we have something in the code that green space in a residential yard has to be a certain percentage of the square footage of the home.
Yep, okay.
Is that,
So,
is that in here, or?
there is not a minimum percentage of the lot to be devoted to green space. What tends to occur is when you have setback requirements, then you get some
Right.
from the setback requirements.
Well, it was a corner, so it was, I don't have a problem with it. I mean,
Good.
you know, I wish my yard was half the size it was, it'd be okay with me. So, I just know it's there, and, you know, I don't have a problem with not having a yard. Then I can maybe tell my neighbor I would be good.
So one thing that is not in here, but is something to consider is, this could be something that's added to on page 4, the larger parcel development, is a requirement, or it could be across the board, but a requirement for public open space or some sort of centralized open space. That's typically something that's expected in the town center area, is that there is some sort of gathering space.
And that would be like another,
Well, on page,
that would be like E or something.
well, under use requirements for large parcel development, it could be in that section, so that whenever you have a project that's 1.5 acres or more, then there is a requirement for a certain percentage of open space. Or it could be added to the table, and every project is required to have a certain percentage of open space.
I kind of would be in favor of that.
Of-
I don't know what everybody else thinks, but if we were gonna have a nice town center type thing and they have at least a small area, kind of like our pocket park in a private area. I don't.
Yep, Councilman?
But are you going to restrict building if you require everyone to provide an open space? Because maybe they can't do their design on that size lot because the open space that we're telling them they have to have isn't going to make their building up to code or to be approved or whatever. I don't know, I didn't say that's the answer, I'm just saying we should consider it.
I agree.
Would it, like, I can't think of it, like the newer shopping centers, you know how they have just a green area even where they have the lights, you know, that, and I'm sure they consider that part green, would that be
Yeah,
considered
so-
green space?
so there's-
Like a softening of everything.
So there's two different requirements to be considered. One is green space from an environmental standpoint in terms of, grassy area, which could be public green space and a gathering place, or a requirement for a civic space, a public space that could be grass and/or hard surface. So it's, it's a question of the purpose of the open space.
I was thinking more in the lines of aesthetically, that, that it looks nice to the eye, that. there's a
Which you
nice
can do
little-
both as grassy area or as pavement. Or, I mean, not necessarily pavement, but hardscape. So if you've ever been to the Shaker Heights new Van Aken district,
No.
so they have what they are calling a living room, an outdoor living room, and it's a mixture of patio, outdoor seating area, and grassy area. So it's got some landscaping and then a plaza sort of thing. And it's not very big, it's an acre inside. But they paired it with a wall that you can show movies on and that sort of thing. So that's that's where it's more a civic space requirement, that you can activate, that you can, do some program, versus a more of a park-like grassy area.
What would you recommend? I mean, we don't, obviously, no one wants what we have now, but just in a circle or whatever, that it's not pleasing to the eye.
So what I would recommend then is that there is a requirement for a civic space that is not totally hardscape. So that you require some mix of green space, but the intent is you could have it all green space, but it could be hardscape and green space, like a plaza.
So would that be a percentage to, as Anthony says, since we don't have a lot of land, will we be, tying someone's hands to do something if we added that in there?
I think that's going to, I would go back and look at the characteristics of the area that we've highlighted as the town center. And one way of dealing with it is to identify on the map, on your planning document, where open space makes sense. So when you think about what's there now, you have recently created green space, right? Right next to the creek?
Colombo Park.
So when you look at the district as a whole, you could be of the opinion to say, okay, well, we've got a sizable green space area on that side, on that quadrant. And so all of this area over here doesn't need green space per se. And so then you're identifying it on the map and where it is required. And then to that extent, or in the sense that there are a lot of smaller parcels, that it may make sense to not have that requirement for lots that fall under a certain threshold. Because you're right, you're getting such a small fragment. So I can come back and, with some ideas on how you could accomplish that.
Yeah, because I'm not, like, set on, like, oh, we have to have it, I just, you know,
Mhm. Yep, okay.
would it be a good idea to put these in there?
Chris, I wonder if, in lieu of a green space, that they are able to create some sort of retention basin to help with some of the flooding in the areas. And I don't know, it wouldn't be specific, but maybe an alternative for the developer would help. And not maybe pigeonhole them into, you have to create a green space, but green space might be nice, but it might not solve a
Right,
problem
right.
in the.
So you have some options.
So
on
I
what-
think, yeah,
How do you fulfill that requirement?
right, I think that maybe to look into that as well.
Yep, okay. All right. So, how long do you want to go? Is this,
We
is this
can-
the?
No, that's not the right time.
It's a
Okay.
little bit. So we've been going for about an hour and a half.
We're about halfway done now.
We can come back and schedule more and just think about what we've discussed this evening and come back.
Sure.
It's up to council. Would you like to schedule another meeting? Okay. So let me look at the calendar. Would council like to come back before our council meeting next Monday? Or we can do it after, or we can do it after, but it might be a little bit late, or we can do the following Monday? Or we can talk to our clerk and see what works best for everybody and
I'm fine with before the meeting next week.
next week?
I'm fine with that. I don't know what anybody else
This is
is.
the 19th and.
What day are you?
We're looking at November 9th for
Yeah.
the meeting?
Yeah, before the meeting?
Like, yes.
My calendar right now says November 9th is fine.
That Monday.
It is Monday.
That is Monday.
Is it Monday?
Monday? How early? Can everyone make it at 6? Or just around 6 o'clock?
What time is your meeting normally?
At 7?
Okay, so do an hour.
If we go over a little bit, it's okay.
That's fine. I mean, that works for me.
Because I know we've got questions.
Yeah, if we can get questions together before then, that would be great.
Yeah, and if there are questions that you can submit and get them to me, then I could come with examples of stuff. Yeah, okay.
Madam President, just for clarification, so you're scheduling a 1-hour work session next Monday from 6 till 7?
Yes, are you planning on having a caucus, Mayor?
Yes. So that'll probably be, waiting to hear, there should be at least one item on the agenda. It has not been confirmed yet. So how about, can we do this? We'll schedule the caucus prior to the work session, and if it's not confirmed, that just gives us additional time for the work session.
Say that again, Mayor?
I'll schedule the mayor's caucus prior to your work session. If the gentleman does not confirm to be at the caucus, that just adds additional time to your work session.
If there's one item on the agenda, how long do you think that would be?
Probably a half hour. It's
Some of
just-
our members may not be able to make it at 5:30. It would be too early.
Correct. Hey, we're open. This is extremely important, so whatever you're available, the administration will be here.
So we do caucus, talk, council meeting, if we have more afterwards? After council?
Director Picorni, is it possible to continue if we schedule our work session for this issue at, say, 6:30 to 7, and then pick it up after our council meeting for a while? Can we do that?
Sure. It's a public meeting, you'll notice it that way, and you'll say that if you're not concluded at 7, you'll start the council meeting at 7 as required, and you'll pick up your work session at the conclusion of the council meeting. I don't see that that's a problem, as
That-
long as we're
Convenient for her.
open about that.
It wasn't me, but we have one individual that has a hard time getting here at 6. So what I'm suggesting is if there's a mayor's caucus, to start it at 6 and to start our work session at 6:30. And if there's no caucus, we can start our work session at 6. And then we can continue. Would you mind waiting through our council meeting, and we can continue afterwards if
How long
need
are
be?
your council meetings?
Not long.
Okay.
So we can do it that way. If
fine with
council,
me.
okay, does council have any objection to that?
No objection.
No, as long as she's fine with it.
Okay.
May I ask you, you indicated, Chris, that if the council has questions based on your presentation tonight and the discussion, that you would like them in advance. So what's the time frame for that? What would you suggest is the last date for questions to the clerk, or me, whoever we direct them to, so we can get them to you, so you have sufficient time to come up with the research or the answers?
So if Friday at noon is doable, that would be fine with me.
Okay.
Any questions?
Okay.
That would work.
Is there anything else? Well, thank you, Chris. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay. And with nothing further before council, the council work session of Monday, November 2nd, 2020 is adjourned at 7:59 PM.